period we are in is unprecedented. The assault that we face is so breathtaking in scale that we all need to understand from the off that the normal rules of engagement do not apply.
Because I believe that when RMT launched the NSSN, it was for times like this.
This is about reclaiming the British trade union movement. This is about democratising the trade union movement.
And let's get back to that old adage, one out, all out.
It demonstrated the bill a one-day general strike that would really make this government think.
We've stuck together, we've told the union, if you don't back us, we'll push it to one side, we'll move forward and we will win. And we are going.
The MPRL is now back at work, driving his train, and we will continue to defend the issue of solidarity.
Solidarity.
Thanks very much, Rob. Good morning to everyone, and thanks for that warm welcome. I'm delighted to be here, and I just want to say how much I agree with the points, Rob, that you've made in your opening speech, because in many ways this has been the best of years. Fantastic to see such a level of activity across the trade union movement. The mass strikes we saw in June, we saw in November, we saw strikes in London in March, and then again with unions nationally in May. Strikes across the private sector have already been referred to. And I start therefore from this perspective, that all of us, I'm sure here, understand. But we've got to ensure that everybody else, whether they're rank and file members or trade union leaders, understand that the period we are in is unprecedented. The assault that we face is so breathtaking in scale that we all need to understand from the off that the normal rules of engagement do not apply.
And this week we've seen workforce in the headlines, the disgraceful treatment of the unpaid workers carrying out stewarding for the Jubilee and forced to sleep under a bridge. Companies such as Tomorrow's People and CP UK exist for profit alone, and that is why they should be never trusted with our welfare work that should be done in the public sector.
The Criminal Justice Act 2003 criminalises mine members if they take industrial action. We are denied the right to free collective bargaining. We are denied the right to the freedom of assembly to protect our interests. We're the only trade union, the Police Federation aren't a trade union, that are denied that basic right. But it didn't stop my members on the 10th of May, and we're ready to face up to the consequences. Bad laws alongside bad government must be challenged.
It was the first conference since the Jarrow March for Jobs, the 330-mile Jarrow March for Jobs rolled into town. And on behalf of Youth Fight for Jobs, I'd like to say thank you to the NSSN for providing the financial, political, emotional and nutritional support that made the march possible. The march allowed us to put youth unemployment firmly on the political agenda. It attracted broad support from working people, from youth, from the communities that the march passed through, and it also received ringing celebrity endorsements from the likes of Stephen Fry and none other than the Fonz himself.
The Sunday Times Rich List showed, published on the 28th of April, the richest 1,000 people in Britain. That's not 1% of the British population, that is 0.003% of the British population saw increase their wealth over the last 3 years by 155 billion. That's enough for themselves alone to pay off the entire current UK budget deficit and still pocket 30 billion for themselves.
It shouldn't be for people like me to tell our cabinet of billionaires unemployment is caused by the fact that workers do not have a direct relationship to the means of production. Unemployment is not caused by a spontaneous outbreak of laziness, and it really makes me angry.
Well, the importance of the conference today is obviously it's representing rank and file activists and shop stewards. And for us to have any chance of building a strike big enough to defeat the government, it's important that across all of our unions, rank and file shop stewards and members are able to make the demand that they should be supported in taking industrial action, and if we take it, we're more effective when we take it together.
How apt it was, wasn't it, that the celebration of the 40th anniversary of the last construction building workers' strike was that the Sparks defeated the Besna and the attacks of 35%.
I'm pleased to see so many of you here today. The Besna dispute was a hallmark dispute in construction, I feel. Certainly for me, in 20 years of being on building sites, before I was blacklisted, it was one of the most amazing 6, 7, 8 months that I'd ever experienced in my life, to be honest.
The NSSN has been absolute concrete behind most of the battles that we've seen, and it's been a huge victory for everything from the Electricians to the POA, and in my case as well, my reinstatement after 4 months suspension. So, thanks Rob, great job.
The guy that he said on the 29th of March, I'm done with them, they'll all just go away. And there he is, sat over the table from us, saying to us, and these were his words, you've got a gun on the table. He contacted Dublin, which is where Kellogg's headquarters is, and what he said to them was, I've had 2 profit warnings. This is our CEO telling us this, by the way. I've had 2 profit warnings, and I'm getting asked about a supply chain problem, sort it out. So they called Maya Malmoffen and said to them, we're going to sue you for brand damage now. Maya Malmoffen then said, obviously, instead of telling us we've got a gun on the table, but when he said that, obviously we opened the chain and started loading the gun.
The message I want to give to you, today you're talking about unions standing together, but you can't rely on the hierarchy to form that bridge. What it's going to take is you're going to have to get rank and file committees formed in your own sector, come together, take action, and then you're the union accountable for not backing you. And that's what we've done with the strength of Steve and the others. We've stuck together, we've told the union, if you don't back us, we'll push it to one side, we'll move forward and we will win. And we have won.
Because an honest analysis tells us that where some unions have been prepared to take a lead, where rank and file organisations and socialists have been prepared to put pressure on from the bottom up, we were able to get 4 unions taking action in June, 29 unions taking action in November. It is possible to build for coordinated strike action on a huge scale, but as we saw after that, it's also possible that if members aren't in control of their own unions, the trade union leaders can try and sabotage that struggle.
And we in the NSSN, in those unions, have a job to do in those weeks to reject a deal of pessimism from the union tops, leaders who, despite the magnificent strike on November the 30th, have adopted a position that concessions had to be made to our employers. And some say that we will march to the top of the hill like the Grand Old Duke of York on November the 30th. Well, I frankly think it's slightly insulting to the Grand Old Duke of York, because at least he marched them back down again. For 8 months, we've been left hanging without a single word from our trade unions. Frankly, they make a Trappist monk look talkative, given the information that we've been given from the likes of Euston, etc. I'm proud to be involved in the National Shop Stewards Network, to recognise its important contribution to rebuilding the strength of the British trade union movement, of its role in building local networks and working with community campaigners.
We've got a couple of lads here from Ratcliffe Power Station. One of those guys, Jason Poulter, was suspended by his employer for alleged bullying.
I'll just touch on a few aspects where I think I was suspended as a steward at Ratcliffe. Mainly the Besna, we took on the roles, we went to meetings, we took inspiration from the likes of Steve Keller, Steve Yateson, to be reps during the Besna. Ratcliffe took an official action weekly, which coincided with rank and file movement. Then myself, Kev, and Steve Ledbetter drove to, who's my rank and file committee member from the Northwest, where I'm from, drove to Middlesbrough in January and galvanised the workforce there into coordinated action against the Besna from Kent to Aberdeen. I was accused of bullying a man by telling him to stopping a chop saw with his hand.
He made a statement about that. I was, as an health and safety rep, I felt I had to do this. Obviously the lads had told me what had gone on. I felt I had to talk to him about this. He made a statement about it. The firm lapped it up. They were loving it, and I was removed.
Unite, as they do, we'll wait for the hearing, we'll be cautious, we'll be careful. But the rank and file had a meeting about a week before in Manchester and decided to protest outside the Ratcliffe site and spoke to the workers going in, and I'm not sure of exact figures, but it was certainly over 600 workers on that site came out in support of Jason that day, and Jason was reinstated.
This isn't going to be the end of this. There's a trend getting set up in the minute in construction against peasant activists. We're seeing it with a lad called Stuart Hume in Scotland, who was pivotal up there. Powell-Davies now conducting a dig out against him. I won't go into too much detail, but as a rank and file electrician, I'm not going to stand by and let this happen, and I know that many of us won't. There's other electricians in here now, activists. We've got Andy, Dean, Steve Kelly, there's many more. We are not going to stand back and let our activists through the basement be dug out or victimised in any way. Solidarity, brothers.
Жизнь ради дела, и все это благодаря этому режиму.
There have been attacks on anybody who tries to build opposition, and especially workers in the workers' movement. There have been physical attacks, there have been murders. If you can support our struggle in Kazakhstan, you will be contributing to our struggle to overthrow the dictatorship.
Спасибо, товарищи.
This is about reclaiming the British trade union movement. This is about democratising the trade union movement. It is about holding the union and its officers to account, and through rank and file pressure, if the official movement is not prepared initially to engage, it's through that rank and file pressure that we can force the official movement to engage and to use its enormous power.
Comrades, it is your conference. It is the conference where we discuss the strategy and tactics, we learn from each other, and we build a movement fit for its name.
Now, we have a little bit of a reputation. A couple of years ago, we agreed to organise a lobby of the TUC in Manchester to call for a national demonstration. 6 months later, there actually was a national demonstration on March 26th. Last year we organised a lobby of the TUC in London to organise a public sector strike. After that we did actually get a public sector strike, and we'd like to think we played some part in achieving that.
What we need to do is to build the biggest ever mobilisation really that we can for the TUC Congress in September, to really demonstrate to our trade union leaders, the good ones, the bad ones. We need to demonstrate to them that we're ready for the fight back, and we're ready and waiting in the wings, and that the appetite is there amongst our memberships. They're not the ones who are holding back when it comes to the fight back.
The coalition government intends to unleash an assault that is bigger than any that we will have faced before. And if that's the case, it requires tactics that are going to measure up to the scale of the attack.
For me, pensions is still the crucial demand that has the ability to unite the whole section of our society in the right way. The NUT is about 45% of teachers in England and Wales. Together with the NSSN, we're nearly 90% of teachers in England and Wales. That matters. In London, you don't see it. In London, the NUT is a huge predominance of teachers. In many areas of the country, the NUT is 35% of teachers in schools. Now, in that situation, if you're striking, you're only 35%, you don't have the effectiveness you do if you get 90% of teachers to strike. So the agreement that we've reached with the NASUWT is of historic significance.
In the 1980s, Liverpool City Council built nearly 5,000 new homes and improved 7,000 others. Today, we have the spectacle of a Labour council in Gravesend in North Kent cutting youth services and laying off youth workers. And their excuse, their defence, is that the Tories told them to do it. Well, that ain't good enough. If we don't take up a programme campaigning around the issues of jobs, of homes, of services, then somebody else will, and we leave ourselves open to the far right to go into working class communities and whip up racism and division by playing on the legitimate fears of ordinary working people.
In March of this year, we saw on the Heathrow Express train operating company 4 rock-solid days of action, strike action, over the sacking of one driver, Zahid Majid, and the victimisation of his branch secretary, Liaquat Ali. I'm again pleased to say that despite what was clearly a victimisation campaign coordinated and orchestrated at a very, very high level by the British Airways Authority in order to strangle trade unionism on the Heathrow Express train company, we were able to prevail in that dispute, and indeed Liaquat Ali is now back at work, driving his train, and we will continue to defend the
Because if this Health and Social Care Bill is fully implemented, then doctors better get ready, because this will be the first of many actions that will be necessary to defend workers' rights across the whole of the health service over the next few months and years.
And we are preparing, comrades, now for the autumn. We believe there has to be a one-day public sector strike in the autumn as the starting point for renewing the campaign. In the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, the Northern Ireland Committee of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions that met last week, the view was expressed: if the TUC won't act, then we must act alone. The North must fight on its own. We don't want that situation. We want a unified fight by both Britain and Northern Ireland, all the unions coming together to fight back against the cuts. But we should say this, comrades. We should mark this. We believe in the greatest possible unity of trade unions, but not at the lowest common denominator. We can't accept that situation. It's not unity at any price. It's a real fighting, militant, working unity to build our movement. It's better to have 15 unions together than 29 unions together if the 15 are determined and prepared to take the fight forward in a proper fight.
Now, to sum up, we're preparing, if you like, for an autumn offensive built on education unions, on health unions, on the civil service, to mobilise a national demonstration on an even bigger scale than we saw last year. But as many others have said, this is not just about public sector pensions, important though that is, and neither is this battle confined to the public sector. This must involve, next time, action across both the public and the private sector.
We're very clear that to defeat austerity there needs to be unity across both public and private sectors, and in that sense, if we can move towards a general strike of 24 hours across the whole economy, that would be a massive step forward.
But now it must be the time. Let's make sure we have that general strike. Let's make sure that we get everyone together, and let's get back to that old adage, that wonderful old adage, one out, all out.
The last thing I'd say is if from that we can build national action of the NSUWT and the NUT, together with other unions, then we can build the kind of November the 30th action that we need again. But I'd say this time, not just a public sector strike, but let's also try to build that alongside private sector colleagues as well. Effectively to move towards the one-day general strike which is in the Guide to Action. Because that's what we need. I think that's exactly what we've got from this conference to say, that we put pressure within our unions and on the TUC tops themselves, not just a demonstration on October the 20th, but a demonstration to build a one-day general strike that would really make this government think.
Comrades, we've been through a lot together. We're going to face a lot together in the next 12 months. I wish you all victory. I wish you all courage. I wish you all solidarity.